Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, an insane Karen demanded that I serve her at a Chinese restaurant simply because I look Asian. The dumb Karen ended up assaulting me. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. It is an unfortunate fact that most waitstaff have a rough time. I'm someone who has worked as a waitress for long enough that I'm always making a point of giving my waitstaff a moment of peace amidst whatever chaos they've been dealing with. When this story's Karen was seated, I immediately knew that she would ruin the night of whoever was assigned to work her table. Her party was huge and there weren't any indications that this restaurant applied automatic gratuity to large parties. She was also belligerent about where her friends sat, sneering and commanding so she could have the table laid out perfectly. All the while the host had to stand there and barely avoid getting laid out prone when Karen went elbowing by. My concern might have been misplaced though. Somewhere in that flurry of activity, the host had distributed utensils and the waiter had come to collect drink orders. The waiter had only been gone for a few seconds when I guess Karen decided to take precise count of how many sets of utensils and chopsticks that they had been provided. Apparently, at least this is what Karen claims, they've been shorted a set of chopsticks. Now this is by no means a catastrophe. In fact, the waiters carry them in their aprons and could easily provide sets considering they are the cheap wooden chopsticks that most actually good Chinese restaurants provide. Karen did not have the patience to wait for her drinks, especially not with someone she perceived as waitstaff so near to her table. And well, that would be me of course. Now, I am ethnically Chinese, but I'm also adopted by an American family. I'm more than familiar and comfortable with the mistaken assumptions that I'm a friend or, gross, my brother's girlfriend, just because I don't match with the rest of them. Anyway, I've been mistaken for the tag-along girlfriend instead of the daughter when I go out with my parents and boyfriend, and still mistaken for a waitress sitting at the table and chatting in casual clothes that don't match the uniform of the restaurant. Well, that is new. Actually, I'd be willing to stretch just a bit to say it is racist profiling to a very harmful extent, but we can cross that bridge later. I'd already decided to try my hardest to shut out Karen and her treatment of the waitstaff. All I could do was leave a good tip of my own and sympathize with them quietly. When Karen inventoried her lacking chopsticks and spotted me, she immediately started snapping to catch my attention. I figured she was calling an actual waiter and did not even stop talking with my family to acknowledge her at all. There was a bit of mumbling and a chuckle rumbled through a few of the people around Karen, with her of course unable to restrain her guffaw of laughter. Then the snapping resumed. Hey, you lazy waitress, I'm trying to get your attention. It was the anger on my father's face that finally made me turn enough attention to the woman to realize that she was trying to get my attention. He obviously wanted to act but waited to see my reaction, so I thought I could defuse the situation and gestured for him to let me handle it. I turned in my chair to face Karen. Yeah, you, and don't you act like you cannot understand American. You're a lousy excuse for a worker. Not that I expect much better from your generation, even the immigrants. That undeniably got me to raise my eyebrows. Ma'am, I don't work at this restaurant, nor have I ever. She scoffed and waved off my comment. Don't give me any excuses. I just want my chopsticks for my friend. I think it's quite rude to leave someone out of chopsticks. Do you people believe that we are not gonna use them just because we are white? Did you think it would be better to save a few? I gave her a tight-lipped grimace. Ma'am, this may be a Chinese restaurant, but your host was a tall white man and your waiter is a man of Hispanic descent. If they can work at a Chinese restaurant, then I assure you that they are not gonna shy away from giving chopsticks to anyone who would want to use them. It must have been an honest mistake. Well, I don't see white or Hispanic men anywhere nearby. I don't remember asking about them at all actually. So how about you get me my chopsticks? Well, I will not, and I will ask that you leave me and my family to eat our dinner. She scoffed again and said, family, sure. I tried to let the comment fly past me and just focus on my own dinner, which was quite tense now. I was gonna need to ask to be seated somewhere else if the discomfort and simmering temper that my family was poorly concealing was anything to go by. Yet again, I was warned about her by my father's absolute inability to hide any of his emotions. His eyes widened and I turned. When I saw Karen out of her seat and much nearer than I expected was possible without her making quite a bit of noise, I blanched and got out of my seat by pure reflex. I was facing her and standing when she grabbed a fistful of my shirt and began to shake me. Fight and flight third partner freeze had me stuck. I will not attempt to guess at the word for word because I was in so much shock. I do know that phrases like insolent worker, you're stealing all our jobs and they're not doing them well, and lazy bitch were being thrown around. My father's raised voice drowned out every other word anyways. My family was instantly trying to protect me. My brother and mother came around the table immediately, but were kept away from me by some of Karen's cronies. My father did raise his voice, but he notably was staying as calm as you could expect him to in this situation. Anyone speaking at a normal volume wouldn't have been able to be heard anyway. He demanded that Karen and her cronies get their hands off of his family or he would call the police. I again repeated that I was not a worker at that restaurant, only for Karen to straight up throw a slur at me. I don't want to even type it out, but it is the one that starts with CH. At this point, I'm completely panicked. I backed up as far as I could, only to bump the table and have my back splashed with spilled drinks as the table shuddered. I think it would be right around this point where the tears started flowing. I found that I was crying by the end, but don't really remember actively crying at any point. Of course, the staff has made it here and are asking about the situation. My father has stated at least 3 times that he will call the police, and I assume that the fact that he waited at all meant that Karen did not believe him. When the waitstaff began asking questions, my father did not take the time to answer them and called the cops. I cannot really figure out anything in the chaos and I'm entirely focused on Karen, but something does catch my eye. Most of Karen's party has surrounded me to keep away my family, but one person is still standing by the table and recording. They were making a video of assaulting me. The inhuman level of cruelty made my head spin. I had not physically done anything to Karen by now. Most of the reason my family hadn't made it to me is because they were pushed away by a crowd of people and did not see a way to get through them without turning it into an altercation that could have serious legal and physical consequences. Everything was held in limbo. I had only told Karen that I don't work here. I told her one more time and that Karen backhanded me. She reached behind for a glass of water and turned to throw it in my face, but was surprised when she turned around. My father had been trying to avoid making anything worse while someone had their hands on his daughter, but the moment he saw me get it hit, he must have seen red. The table between me and him might as well have vanished as it went scraping across the ground, and everything on top of it got scattered. When Karen turned with her glass of water, he grabbed her wrist and shoved his phone in her face to show that the call with 911 was still active. The manager of the restaurant was here by now. The moments of chaos had felt like minutes to me, but realistically, the staff all responded very quickly. With the manager taking charge, he was able to tell Karen that she was expected to be there when the police arrived. She scoffed and said that she had no reason to run or hide. The parties were all separated and the manager was profusely apologizing to me as well as offering me countless appetizers, meals, desserts, etc. I appreciated his efforts even if at the moment it overwhelmed me. The police arrived and took a report. I may be an adult and have every right and ability to take care of myself, but I accept help. When the officer came to collect my statement, I had already discussed it with my father to see what he would advise. He advised that I press charges and search for a protective order, which meant it was going to come to a trial. The trial came and it was obvious from her swagger through the early proceedings that Karen expected this to be nothing more than theatrics, and she certainly expected no serious consequences. In fact, she must have been incredibly smug about her own success in the situation because she had the gall to post a video to her social media. Her social media was absolutely chock full of videos of her verbally assaulting the workforce at pretty much every establishment you could imagine. I cannot even imagine having the gall to chew out your car mechanic for something that you don't even know anything about. Still, I'm grateful that she had a following. She hides her face in her videos, but ever since I told my brother about the camera I saw during the assault, he had been scouring all sorts of different sites to try to find it. It was not quite viral and it was not even a full video of the assault. My brother did not let that stop him from finding it though. It started with Karen putting snippets of text over her recording me sitting with my family. She listed out complaints about the arrogance of my generation and was adamant in the text that while she was trying to catch my attention, I was trying to act like I didn't understand English. It didn't show the full assault, but just tying this to Karen proved that there was malicious intent behind her actions, and there was the cherry on top of this gem. At least 2 of the statements that Karen listed in the text of her video explicitly insulted me because I'm ethnically Chinese. To make it better, Karen also used the CH slur I mentioned earlier in a whispered conversation with her cameraman. So, the judge who was handling our assault case was a POC, and the law of the state I'm in is not lax when it comes to hate crimes. All it took in trial was to undoubtedly tie the people in the video to the assault, and the judge was quick to turn a misdemeanor assault and intimidation charge into a felony hate crime with proof of malicious intent, digging Karen's hole even deeper. This one time I can be happy with the arrogance and stupidity of people out there, because it meant that Karen just couldn't restrain herself from posting a video further condemning actions that had already brought her to court. She was sentenced to a nice stay behind bars with a chance of parole on good behavior, which I doubt, after a year. Except the chance of parole was removed when Karen assaulted her lawyer in front of the judge and the whole courtroom because why the F should she pay him so much money just for him to lose the case? I went back to the restaurant right away, and I wanted to make sure they knew that I did not blame them for this. They tried to give me a free meal, but I left a tip for the ticket plus some, and I plan to keep going back. And the next one is titled, My 29 male girlfriend, 30 female, did not tell me about her previous situationship with a friend she was planning a 6-week backpacking trip with. My girlfriend and I dated for half of 2022 and then broke up. After about 1.5 years apart, we got back together last winter and have been together again for about 3 months. During that year we were apart, she had a relationship with a coworker who she was also living with. She called it a situationship. Also, during that year they backpacked several hundreds of miles of the PCT together. They both moved to separate cities last fall after the hike, but decided to remain friends and made plans to return to hike another several hundreds of miles of the PCT this upcoming summer. And well, my girlfriend and I started talking again last fall, about 1 month after they parted ways. While we were talking, she invited me to join them over the summer, and I planned to join for part of it, about 4 weeks. She never mentioned that they had any romantic relationship while telling me about her time living with him and his family, or her time backpacking with him. I thought they were just friends. However, pretty soon after officially getting back together a few months ago, we were discussing boundaries, and I told her explicitly that I expected her to tell me if she had any romantic history with any friends who are currently still in her life, especially if me and her were going to spend time with said person. She acknowledged how I felt and I appreciated it, but didn't mention anything about them. A month later, we were discussing how the summer hiking trip would go with the 3 of us. They'd be hiking without me for the first few weeks, and we were discussing the tent situation, and she mentioned wanting to sleep in a separate tent than him during the part of the trip that it was the 2 of him. I was confused and asked why, since it made more sense for them to share a tent, splitting the weight of a 2-person tent, and then me and her could have our own tent when I joined them. She seemed kind of meh on the idea of them sharing, but didn't tell me why. In retrospect, it seems likely that she herself was not comfortable with the idea of sharing a tent with a former partner without telling me their history. Anyway, she recently told me about their history, and now I am very hurt. Of course, everyone has a right to their own past, and I don't want or need to know every detail of every guy she's ever been with, but I feel very betrayed that she would hide her history with someone that she was gonna spend so much alone time with, and invited me to spend time with them without telling me. To me, it feels very relevant to know this information when it comes to former partners who are currently in both of our lives in a big way, spending 100% of every day together for 6 weeks. So I directly told her I felt this way, but she ignored me and omitted the information. I'm really hurt by what is happening and feel like it'll be hard to trust her moving forward. From her perspective, I can understand that if she was afraid I would break up with her after hearing this, she wouldn't want to tell me. But I don't know why she would be worried about that. I don't think there's anything wrong with being friends with your exes. She is good friends with another ex of hers. She would put him at 1 or 2 in terms of closest friends. Told me, and I'm totally fine with it. I'm unsure about how to think about our future and would love to hear some outside opinions. And yeah, ripe stars, let me know what you think about this one. Is OP the a-hole here, or are there some serious red flags, and is OP in the right for being very suspicious about all of this happening? A user in the comments said, she's going hiking with a former boyfriend with whom she lived with and broke up because they moved cities? A lot of red flags in the post, OP. How is she acting after you told her how you felt? I can understand being friends with an ex, but this seems extreme. And then OP answered, I don't know the details of their relationship as I just found out today. I just tried listing the facts, not sure exactly why they stopped seeing each other. I have not talked to her about it besides hearing her tell me and apologize for keeping it a secret. She also said she knows it was very disrespectful and wants to do anything to keep us together. After she told me, I just said I needed space to think and haven't contacted her since. Then another user said, definitely getting more context is needed. I personally think one-to-one trips like this with a recent ex is a boundary I would not be comfortable with, especially without knowing the details of their relationship. They were obviously at a stage that they were living together. Being friends with exes is totally okay, but this just seems strange. Like, have you met her ex ever? Is she FaceTiming and calling this person a lot? This seems like a trip that you would have with a very good friend, not an ex-boyfriend from under a year ago. Are they that good of friends? Are you comfortable with that? Personally, I'd proceed with a lot of caution. I'd probably have a hard time trusting a trip like this. I'm not even sure how you could set boundaries for this. They were a situationship, OP answered, as I wrote in the OP post. She moved to a small town to work and couldn't find a place to live. He was a coworker who lived with his family in this small town, and she ended up living with him and his family, and somehow something romantic came out of that. That's what I know, and I'm not interested in asking her for more details. I've never met the guy. She texts with him occasionally and recently complained to me that he hasn't been responding to her texts that much since he moved to his new city and got new friends. This before I knew that they were a thing. She was also upset when he expressed uncertainty in joining for the summer hiking trip, which surely happened after he learned that I was the new boyfriend and that I would be going. Update to my previous post, which you can see on my profile. I talked to her last night about the situation. She was very apologetic and admitted she made a huge mistake and betrayed my trust, vowing to never do that again. She said the reason she eventually told me was because she couldn't hold the guilt in anymore from not telling. Interestingly though, when I used the word lied, she argued with it at first, claiming she did not lie, but then quickly changed her mind when I pushed her on it. I asked why she felt like she needed to not tell me about her history with him. She said it was because she knew that I was gonna get mad. She did not bring up anything specific that I did to give a reason to think this, just a general feeling. She pointed out that she felt confused about whether I wanted to know about their history or not, because earlier in the same conversation that I told her I wanted to know which of her friends were exes months ago, I also cut her off when we were talking about our year apart, and she started a sentence with, "I had a lot of situationships." I then got uncomfortable and interrupted her, saying that I didn't need to know that. I regret how I acted in that moment. I did not yell or get mad, but I was uncomfortable and shut down the conversation about that topic. I should have let her finish her sentence at least, and it probably made her feel that I was overly sensitive about her past. She said because of this, she thought I didn't want to know about the hiking friend from last year. To me, it just feels like there's no inconsistency not wanting to hear your partner say, "I slept with a lot of people in the year we were apart," and wanting to hear them say, "I slept with the guy who I'm friends with and we're about to hike with for 4 weeks." Also, if she actually thought I didn't want to know their history, why did she feel so guilty not telling me? I'd also like to point out that our relationship in 2022 ended when I dumped her unexpectedly, and I treated her very coldly the night we broke up. I had a lot of pent-up feelings about how she was treating me that year. I can totally see how her fear of being dumped suddenly again had kept her from wanting to mention her relationship with this guy. It would make sense that she was afraid of me abandoning her again. At this point in the conversation, I was understanding of what she did. She apologized in a way that felt genuine, and I felt like we could work through it. Then I started digging a little deeper to see if I was still missing anything about the situation. I forgot to mention it in my last post, but a few weeks ago, she told me that her ex basically bailed on the hike for the summer. It was very likely he would not be able to go. She told me at the time it was because he couldn't afford it. Around the same time, she also complained to me that he was not texting her back, and she was annoyed because she felt like he did not want to be friends with her anymore now that they didn't live in the same city. Thinking they were only ever friends, I thought it made sense. I would feel sad if my friends didn't talk to me much after moving. Yesterday, when I confronted her about all this, I asked again why he could not go on the hike, and she said again it was because he couldn't afford it. I asked her if she believed him, and she said yes. Then I asked her if she was okay with her inviting me on the trail. She revealed that he actually did not like the idea of me coming, but he was mainly bailing because of money. I asked to read their text message conversation about it, and she agreed. In their text conversation, her ex at first pointed out to her that he couldn't afford the trip, but then he also brought up that he didn't like the idea of hiking with me. He said he felt jealous even though he knows her and him were just a temporary thing last year, and he wished I was not joining them on the trail because the PCT was their thing. There were a lot of words, but he was using phrases like, "I feel a pit in my stomach," and things along those lines. He also said he felt like a placeholder since their temporary relationship was sandwiched between me and her first dating in 2022 and then getting back together. She told him that she was upset that he couldn't disentangle their past relationship from their current friendship. She agreed with him that hiking the PCT was indeed their thing and said that she wished I would not come because she felt like I was not a great partner for the trail. I'm faster than them, and she said she thought I might get impatient. Or at least that she could hike alone with him for the first half and then alone with me for the second half so that we wouldn't have to meet. The situation was finally made clear from reading their messages. She wanted to keep this guy in her life even though he was not over her. He confessed all this to her a month ago and she kept it a secret from me. She lied to me about the nature of their relationship because she knew I would not be okay with them being friends given that there was still something there. Also a few months ago, before we were officially dating again but just talking every day, when she initially asked him if I could join their hike this summer, she didn't use my name, she just said my friend. This was another lie by omission, this time to her ex, to prevent him from knowing the truth about the whole situation. Obviously, eventually she told him that I was the friend and then later he decided he didn't want to join. During the whole conversation that night, the point I was making was that her omitting their history in order to protect herself hurt my feelings and made me not trust her. And during the conversation last night, she tried again to omit information to protect herself when she claimed that he only bailed because he didn't have enough money. I wouldn't have even known that he still had romantic feelings about her if I had not asked to read her text because she omitted that again. I dumped her after that. I respect myself too much to stay in a relationship with someone who is comfortable repeatedly lying to my face in order to get her way, especially about such an important topic so early on in the relationship. To those who gave insightful, nuanced advice, thank you. I learned a lot from this entire situation and know how to handle these topics better in future relationships. To the one person who suggested that I ask to read their text, I cannot thank you enough for helping me dodge this bullet. And a user in the comments said, how did she react when you broke up with her for the second time? You did the right thing, man. She was never gonna tell you the full truth, and figuring it all out was all the proof you needed that you will never be able to trust her ass again. Then OP answered, she tried to convince me not to for a while, saying she would change and we would work through this and stuff. She also lamented how we were perfect on paper because of similar hobbies and didn't know what to do now with this large painting she just made me for Valentine's Day. No huge emotional display, because she probably predicted this was gonna happen ever since I found out on Monday. She then went on to kind of pivot the conversation into how really this situation was both of our fault since I didn't cultivate an environment where she could feel comfortable telling me stuff based on how swiftly I ended things between us last time. I just don't care anymore and want this person out of my life forever so I can move on. Then someone in the comments said, my friend. Ouch. That would do it for me. OP answered, I'm not even sure she's aware of how she treats other people, to be honest, or if she's just incredibly selfish. And yeah, ripe stars, I would say OP dodged a huge bullet here. Props to him. I hope he finds someone else in the future that better suits him. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.